Okay, so without further ado, I think we'll get started. So again, welcome everyone to this Wellness Wednesday session. It's wonderful to have you all here. So today's host is we're here joined with Malcolm Huxter. So I'll get started with a bit of an introduction for what we will be covering in today's session. So let's start. So we will be having a 4-week course with Malcolm on Wellness Wednesdays, and the topic will be aspects of early Buddhist meditation, Serenity and Insight. For week 1, which is today, you've all joined in the first week, which is a great start for the next month. Malcolm will be covering the dynamics and mutually supporting aspects of serenity and insight. This Dharma talk will discuss the differences and dynamics between the two general aspects of early Buddhist meditation, serenity and insight. It will list the varying features of these two approaches and discuss how they work together and support each other in order to result in awakening. So let me introduce to you Malcolm Huxter a little bit further by giving you some details about his background. So Malcolm Huxter is a semi-retired clinical psychologist in private practice. He's also a Dharma teacher. Malcolm, or Mal, began following the teachings of the Buddha in the mid-1970s, mostly within the Theravada traditions. However, he has also practiced within Tibetan, Mahayana, and Japanese Zen traditions. He has been teaching mindfulness and related meditation practices such as loving kindness and compassion to clinical populations, clinicians, and the general public with courses, seminars, workshops, and retreats for nearly 35 years. Mal ordained as Buddhist monk for a short 2-year period in the forest traditions of Thailand in the late 1970s. After disrobing, he was a shiatsu therapist for 10 years until he gained psychology qualifications. He has worked as a clinical psychologist, supervisor, and trainer in a variety of settings in rural and remote Australia, as well as in the UK. Mal has an abundance of talks and guided meditations available online, has written several mindfulness-based workbooks published in psychology journals and magazines, and had a book called Healing the Heart and Mind with Mindfulness, Ancient Path, Present Moment, released in February 2016. He is a loving partner, proud dad of 3 adult sons, and a doting granddad. He currently lives with his partner and dog in Lismore, where he likes to meditate, cycle, be with nature, and tries to learn to play guitar when he can. So as you can see, Malcolm has quite the background and has been practicing for more years than I've been alive. So,
Yeah.
I'll hand it over to you, Malcolm, if you'd like to introduce and share the structure of today's session.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course.
So I'm going to try starting to record this, and I hope that I just want to make mention about recordings. If you turn off your microphone, you might get recorded. Your image might get recorded. So we'll have a period where we can ask questions, and I won't record that period. How's that sound? Okay. So I'm going to record. See if I can record it from here. Record to this computer. Yes. Okay. Can you hear that? Did it say? Oh, great. Okay, so thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be a guest speaker at the Metta Center. Um, it's an honor to be here. So during our time together, I would like to invite you to wake up to the reality of the way things are. by cultivating serenity, insight, and the heart. And during these sessions, I'll be providing some, I'm just going to change my view here. I'll be providing some guidance in meditation and Dharma talks. And also we'll have the opportunity for interactive discussion, comments and questions and so on. So I'll begin with guiding you in a meditation. And the meditation that I'd like to begin to guide you in is this, a co-joining of the serenity and insight aspects of meditation. And it's the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing. Now, we might get to the whole 16 steps over our 4 weeks. We may not. But tonight, I'd like to invite you to the first 4 steps because this is a beautiful practice, and it's this weaving together of serenity and insight throughout the whole 16 steps. And the 16 steps are divided into 4 tetrads. I mentioned that before. A tetrad is a group of 4. And this evening, I'll invite you to the first 4 steps, which are the first step. Well, actually, there's the preliminaries about setting up and finding some physical and mental seclusion. Then I invite you to bring mindfulness to the fore. Then I invite you to steer your mindfulness towards your breathing, the breathing. And then I invite you to kind of investigate. What's interesting about these 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing, they correlate with the 7 factors of awakening. And for some of you who know the 7 factors of awakening, they are mindfulness, investigation, investigation into Dharma, Dharma's energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And these first 4 steps cover mindfulness, investigation into phenomena or investigation into Dhammas, and energy. And the first step is mindfulness of the breathing and how it is, with kind of a clear comprehension of how it's coming up, how it's what's presenting, and like an investigation into it. It's a kind of curiosity into how we are breathing. And in the sutta it goes, breathing in long, I'm aware that I'm breathing in long. Then the next step goes, breathing out, I'm breathing in short, I'm aware that I'm breathing in short. The third step, what happens is we put mindfulness of breathing into the background, and it stays in the background. It's there, but it's in the background. And in the foreground, what comes is mindfulness of the body, breathing. We're aware of our whole body. And then that's the third step. And then the fourth step is relaxing. Basically, in the sutras, it says calming bodily activity, which I take as meaning relaxing, which is wonderful. So I'm going to invite you to the first 4 steps this evening, sorry. And so let's begin. So you're invited to construct a posture that is comfortable and at ease. And having found some physical seclusion where you are right now, in your home or in a center or wherever you are, I invite you to find some mental seclusion by putting aside worries and concerns, putting aside roles and responsibilities, putting aside thoughts about the future and thoughts about the past, and come into this moment, just here now. And bring mindfulness to the fore. Being aware in general of being here now. And you're invited to hone that mindfulness in on your breathing, to your breathing, knowing that you are breathing. Letting the breathing be completely natural without forcing it to be fast or slow, rhythmical, or whatever. Just allow the breathing to happen. Let the breathing breathe you. And bring a sense of curiosity to the experience of breathing. And if you're breathing long, know that you are breathing long. Breathing in long, breathing out long. And if you're breathing in short, know that you're breathing short. Breathing in short, breathing out short. Be curious with investigation, with mindfulness, being present for the experience, and a level of curiosity and interest, investigation into how you are breathing. Now, you're invited to put mindfulness of the breathing into the background and into the foreground. Bring awareness of your body. And there's many ways we can be aware of our body. One way is tuning into or being aware of physical sensations. And if you wish, you can scan from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, slowly and gradually, being aware of physical sensations as you're breathing. Being aware of sensations at the top of your head, your forehead, cheeks, mouth. Being aware of your shoulders, neck, arms. Breathing in, breathing out. Experiencing body. You can be aware of the sensations at the top of your chest and top of your back. Scanning through your torso. Breathing in, breathing out with mindfulness and curiosity, energy, the experiencing body. Let your awareness move down, lower abdomen, lower back, pelvis, groin, hips, buttocks, thighs, knees, calves, feet. Breathing in, breathing out, wherever the body. And zooming out, you can be aware of the whole of the body, breathing. And you may notice that as you become aware of body, it naturally begins to relax. The calming of bodily activity. And perhaps you can begin at the top of the head again, or just feel the whole body relaxing. If you begin at the top of the head again, you can move your awareness down to your forehead, face. Breathing in, breathing out, letting go. Letting go of muscular tension. And relax. Breathing in, breathing out to your neck, the whole of the head, the neck and shoulders. Relaxing. Letting go of tension, muscular tension. Breathing in, breathing out, calming bodily activity. Relaxing. Being aware of the shoulders, arms, forearms, hands. Just letting go. Letting go of that tension that you may be holding on to. Just let it all go. Breathing in, breathing out. Relaxing. And perhaps you can move awareness through your torso from the top, through your torso, letting the breath move freely as the torso moves. And on an out breath, perhaps there's a deep relaxation. Beautiful relaxation. Down the back, letting the abdomen move freely. And relax on the out breath. Being aware of your buttocks, hips, groin, thighs, knees, calves, feet. Relaxing deeply. Whole body. It's like there's a beautiful sweet spot right at the end of the out-breath. And if you experience any pleasure arising from this process of mindfulness and concentration, nourish it with detachment, without clinging. Simply enjoy it without clinging. Breathing in, breathing out. Deep relaxation. So let's now continue this practice in silence for a few minutes. So thanks everyone for your diligent effort, energy, whatever you like to call it. So I'm going to provide a Dharma talk right now. And basically it's about these dynamics and features of serenity and insight. And in all Buddhist approaches, whatever Buddhist approach you particularly prefer to follow, meditation is framed within a context of the noble and ennobling Eightfold Path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right concentration. So each factor on this path is equally important. And these 8 factors are divided into 3 components. Right view, right intention is the wisdom component. Right speech, right action, right livelihood is the ethics component. And right energy, mindfulness, and concentration is the meditative component. So it's ethics, meditation, and wisdom, basically. So what happens with this is that each factor on the path works together to result in wisdom, to work towards wisdom. And wisdom is what wakes us up. And it's sometimes this Eightfold Path is compared to a wheel with 8 spokes. Each spoke is equally important, and the wheel rolls towards awakening, rolls towards insight and awakening. So in Theravadan Buddhism, the Pali term often used for meditation is bhavana, which translates as to bring into being or to cultivate. And what we cultivate with Buddhist meditation, or in early Buddhism anyway, is serenity and insight. These are the 2 aspects of Buddhist meditation, serenity and insight. And the cultivation of serenity in Pali is called samatha. And in English, it's often talked about as tranquility or calm or calm abiding. The insight component is usually called, in Pali, it's called vipassana, which directly translates as seeing intensely, seeing distinctly. And it's about seeing the way things actually are. It's actually seeing things as they are. And we need insight to wake up. That's needed, which is about seeing clearly and distinctly. However, we also need some form of serenity or some form of focus to give us the power to see clearly the way things are. So, as far as I understand, in early Buddhism, the Buddha taught the way to freedom as including meditation, and he taught there were basically 3 vehicles towards, for practice, basically. One vehicle was serenity first, then insight. Another vehicle was insight only. And yet another vehicle was insight and serenity co-joined. So that's in early Buddhism. And this idea of calm meditation practice and insight meditation practice, you've probably all heard of insight meditation. It's quite popular. That's a popular way of describing lots of different meditation approaches that are currently in contemporary society. That those different approaches weren't bifurcated until the editing of a text in 9 centuries after the Buddha's presence in India. This text was called The Path of Purification, or the Visuddhimagga. And there they distinguish between these 2 qualities, or these 2 features of insight and serenity. So as their names suggest, the serenity component, or the serenity aspect, is to cultivate calm, a clear mind, and a mind that is fit for purpose. The purpose of a serenity, a serene state of mind, or the purpose of serenity here is to give muscle to insight, give power to insight. So I created a table to distinguish the features of serenity or calm and insight, and it's like this. With calm meditations, actually, I'll speak about it like a spectrum. If we put meditation on a spectrum, where at one end of the spectrum you have insight, and the other end of the spectrum you would have serenity. What happens is on the insight end of the spectrum, there is also strong mindfulness, strong mindfulness. And at the serenity end of the spectrum, we have strong concentration. And we also have absorption at the serenity end of the spectrum. At the insight end of the spectrum, we have um, clearly seeing. And what happens is that at all meditation involves these features of energy, concentration, and mindfulness. But depending on which end of the spectrum you're at, in mindfulness will be emphasized at the inside end of the spectrum, and concentration or samadhi will be emphasized at the serenity end of the spectrum. And the interesting thing is that you can go backwards and forwards and have different ratios of mindfulness and concentration. And sometimes we can choose to practice at the serenity end of the spectrum, and sometimes we can choose to practice at the insight end of the spectrum. And sometimes in any one meditation, you can go backwards and forwards along this spectrum. So uh, the the calm meditations emphasize absorption, and insight meditations, or the insight aspect of meditation, emphasizes inquiry and understanding. The calm end of the spectrum emphasizes sustained attention on a single object, and the insight end of the spectrum emphasizes inquiry into that object, like deep inquiry into the nature of the object. The calm end of the spectrum emphasizes unity, like a coming together and a oneness. And the inside end of the spectrum emphasizes deconstruction. The calm end of the spectrum emphasizes perceiving stillness. And the inside end of the spectrum emphasizes perceiving three characteristics of existence. It also emphasizes discerning these causes and conditions, discerning the way things come to be and how they change and how they cease. So it's more perceiving the characteristics of things, but not necessarily absorbing in those things. You're absorbing in the calm end of the spectrum, but on the inside end of the spectrum, you're more perceiving the nature of experience. And it's not on any one thing. It can be on numerous things. Whereas with the serenity end of the spectrum, you usually engage in focusing on one object, like an absorption. It could be, the absorption into the experience of loving kindness, for example, or absorption into an experience of the mindfulness of breathing. Whereas with the inside end of the spectrum, you're not necessarily focusing on any one thing, but you're looking at patterns and the way things change and the way things, well, there's three characteristics that are emphasized. The three universal characteristics of existence are emphasized in insight meditation. So what we do with insight meditation is we're perceiving impermanence, or in Pali it's called anicca. We're perceiving dukkha, which, I mean, there's a couple of different ways we can understand dukkha. In this sense, when we're talking about as a characteristic of existence, the dukkha nature of things means that it's all things are, because they change, they're unable to provide enduring happiness because they change, because they're uncertain. Sometimes the way this dukkha quality or characteristic of existence is described is as that nothing is reliable, nothing is certain. And because things change, uh, nothing arises in and of itself. There's causes and conditions. There's it's called not self in early Buddhism. It's all called in Pali. It's called anatta. So we have these three characteristics of existence: anicca, which refers to impermanence; dukkha, which refers to uh, things being unreliable and uncertain, not being able to provide enduring happiness; and anatta, referring to, in this case, not self, meaning that there's no single thing or no single self that can be found in this mind-body stream. You know, it's similar to in early Buddhism. I think emptiness is understood in a similar way. Emptiness here refers to how there's no the experience or conditioned phenomena is empty of thingness. There's no thing in all this. What we find in all this is streams of dependently arising processes interacting. So the insight and serenity come back again. We emphasize samadhi or concentration with calm meditation practices. And we emphasize mindfulness with insight meditation. In fact, if you look at a practice called the Four Establishments of Mindfulness, which is Satipatthana in Pali, um, and there's a sutta about this. If you look at that, what we find is that sometimes that whole practice of being mindfulness of body, feelings, mind or heart mind, and phenomena is synonymous with what we often call insight meditation. It's this practice of mindfulness. So calm meditations give muscle to insight, and insight gives direction to serenity. When we're practicing serenity, sometimes we can go off on, wayward tangents. Like we can get absorbed in something, and it can be, really interesting and actually lead us astray actually into pathways that may be not so helpful. So when we cultivate insight, when I say insight gives direction to samadhi, it's like insight gives us an understanding of what's going on so we can choose how we direct our attention, how we direct our concentrated minds. But this process of calm giving muscle to insight emphasizes how that with a calm mind, we can see clearly. When our fragmented and dispersed mental energies become still, our minds become very clear. And it also becomes very powerful. We have this power to penetrate into the nature of phenomena. I remember trying to practice insight meditation once, and over many years actually, and I hadn't really cultivated much concentration, and I found that I couldn't really sort of settle and see clearly. So as soon as I started to put some concerted effort or energy or effort into cultivating samadhi, my insight practice kind of it really energized and empowered my insight practice. It turbocharged it, so to speak. So I could really, if I turned my attention to something, I could really see the nature of that thing. That experience. I could really see the impermanence of it. I could detect the not self nature of it. I could also detect the unsatisfactory nature of it. So this experience of insight and serenity works really well. Basically, that's actually this is the path that the Buddha followed. He endured a lot of difficulty for 6 years when he was on his um, self-denial and self mortification period. For 6 years, he just followed the self-mortification, and he came to this realization that it was a waste of time, basically. It wasn't profitable to beat himself up. And he realized that there's a certain sort of pleasure that is beneficial. And he remembered a time when he was just a young boy in his father's fields, and he spontaneously went into what's called the first jhana, the first stage of a highly refined concentration. And it was powerful. And he realized that, hey, maybe this is the way. I'll tell you more about this next week. That's the topic of next week's talk, by the way. Uh, I'm, I'm calling it spiritual pleasure and the cultivation of joy, happiness, contentment, and peace. So I'll go more into that next week. But what I'm talking about here is this um, function of serenity and insight working together. Insight, serenity tends to restore and rejuvenate, whereas insight tends to develop understanding. And I mentioned before that calm is focusing on a single object. If you take up a serenity, if you go down the serenity end of the spectrum, you're focusing and absorbing on a single object, and you're not exercising any inquiry. But with the insight meditation, you can use multiple objects. It doesn't matter. Like you can be aware of the impermanence in in your breathing, for example, one moment, and then the next moment you could be aware of a thought, and you could just be going all over the place. And what's important here is you're picking up on these three characteristics, and also the way things work together. Um, I guess I might as well say something about dependent arising here, because this is the principle that we're looking at with insight meditation. Dependent arising is the principle from which the Buddha explained how things come to be and also how they disappear. And you'll probably hear me talking about dependent arising many times through these series. And I might even make the final talk on dependent arising and emptiness and waking up. But it's quite a complicated principle. However, throughout the sutras, the Buddha said something quite simple about it. He said, when this is, that is. With the arising of this, that rises. When this is not, that is not. With the ceasing of this, that ceases. In other words, um, there's nothing arises in and of itself, and there are causes and conditions for everything. And this is what we look at when we're practicing insight, as well as anicca, dukkha, anatta, as well as these characteristics of existence. In fact, when we see these characteristics of existence, we begin to wake up, and we also see dependent arising. So calm meditation purifies the mind. And I'll explain how this is in a minute. And insight meditation purifies view. So what does all this mean? Well, I'm a clinical psychologist, and people often come to me for various issues that are happening in their lives, like they're depressed or they're anxious and all the rest of it. A whole range of suffering that they bring. And sometimes they might bring a particular issue that they want to work on. And I say, well, I apply all the empirically validated approaches, of course, because I'm obliged to do that. But also clinical psychology is based on scientific evidence. So, but what I do say is, well, you can go the serenity way or the insight way of working with this. So what do I mean by this? Well, there's a saying in neuroscience, and I'm going to refer to neuroscience here to help clarify this. There's a saying in neuroscience that goes, neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, the more you um, activate a particular neural pathway, the stronger that neural pathway will become. In fact, it'll actually grow. Um, like, for example, um, Simran, Simran mentioned that like to try to practice learning guitar occasionally. And I noticed that the more I practice, if I go through a spout of a bout of trying to play a particular piece, I notice that I actually get better and better at it. And it's fantastic because what I'm doing actually is I'm building up neural pathways in particular areas of my brain, such as those related to fine motor movement with my fingers, also uh, with other areas related to rhythm, other areas related to reading. I'm reading the music. A whole range of things happen. The more I do that, the more my brain grows in that area, the stronger those neural pathways become. And there's another saying that goes, use it or lose it, meaning the more you don't do anything, the more it fades away. Like like when I put my guitar down, sometimes for months on end, I noticed that I'm losing some skills. And once upon a time I used to speak Thai, and um, I'm starting to forget a lot of words. So it's like there's a natural culling with the brain, with neurons. So if you want to apply this to this idea of um, serenity or insight, the way it works is that some people might come to me and they may be in a habit of worrying. And what happens here is that the more they worry, the more they worry. It's like they have this neural pathway of going down the worrying track. And if I invite them, however, to attend to something else, like, for example, the experience of breathing, and if I invite them to attend to something that's even uplifting, uh, something that's really enjoyable at a spiritual sense, then what happens is that they make effort to go down that pathway rather than the pathway of worry. So this is how we purify the mind. Uh, we purify the mind because we choose not to nourish and feed into unwholesome patterns of mind, and rather we attend to and nourish and nurture wholesome patterns of mind. There is a saying, there is a story about uh, an American Indian warrior with his grandmother, and the young warrior really loves his grandmother and respects her. And one day he says, "Grandmother, how come you're so wise?" And she says, "Oh, it's like I've got two wolves. One wolf is really mean and nasty and cruel and aggressive, and the other wolf is wise and helpful and kind and generous. I feed the helpful wolf and I don't feed the unhelpful wolf. I don't feed the nasty wolf." And that's this, in this way, what we're doing with serenity meditation is we're choosing to go down one particular pathway. And in this way, it purifies the mind. Now, what do I mean by purifying view with insight meditation? Well, I would like to say that when we start to see the way things actually are, that they're actually impermanent, they're of a not self nature, and that they're unreliable, or they're not able to give enduring happiness. Um, and also we see dependent arising, we see how things come to be and how they cease. When we start to see patterns in life, then we're purifying our view of things. We're developing right view, actually. Right view, which is the first factor on the Noble Eightfold Path. So I think I'd like to, before I finish, I want to share an analogy here. And this is a bit of a story. I can't remember where I got this story. I think it was from Achan Chah, but I'm not sure. Um, but it's about, say, it's about losing one's precious jewels in a muddy pond or a muddy pond. And so imagine, you're walking in a park somewhere or you're walking in the forest somewhere and you have your precious jewels on you and somehow they get lost in this very, very muddy pond. And it's muddy because it's been stirred up by, storms and all sorts of other things. So you think, oh, what am I going to do? How can I find my pond? Can I find my jewels? Uh, and you can't see into the pool, but you know it's very muddy and you know your jewels are there somewhere. So what you do, and you don't want to kind of look around because there might be terrible things in the pool to bite your hand or whatever. So what you do is you stop and you wait and you put up some protection around the edge of the pond so it's not getting stirred up and you wait and you wait and you wait for the sediment to settle. You're protecting it from the storm as well as people jumping in, and you let the water settle. You let the sediment settle to the bottom, and it starts to become really clear. The water becomes really clear, and when you look in, you see some rusty cans and broken bottles and bits of 4B2 with nails sticking out, and you think, my goodness, I'm glad I didn't, step in there because I could have hurt myself. And in fact, if you are going to step in there, you can avoid stepping on those things, but also you can actually remove them from harm's way. And so you carefully remove them from harm's way and you still look in the pond and you can't see it anywhere. You can't see them anywhere. So you carefully and mindfully start to inquire under rocks. You start to look under rocks with a curiosity and inquiry, and there you find them. There's your precious jewels and you reclaim them. So here's the analogy. Um, the muddy pond is like our mind. Our mind when it's really filled with, all sorts of mental distortions. Uh, the and the losing of the precious jewels is like losing our wisdom, losing our uh, compassionate wisdom. And setting up protection around the pool is like practicing ethics in order for us to have a clear mind. If we don't have an ethical foundation, we can't really meditate very well. I mean, I've never met anybody who meditates very well without with a solid ethical foundation. So with an ethical foundation, what happens is we have the capacity to still our mind, to calm our mind, to see with insight. So the sediment settling is like practicing samadhi or practicing serenity. The mind becomes really clear, uh, not disturbed, still. So we can see clearly in there. The investigation underneath the rocks, oh sorry, the removal of all these terrible things in the pond, like the rusty cans and broken bottles and bits of 4B2 with rusty nails sticking out, is like finding those, realizing the things that have happened in our lives that we may want to have pushed away and never really processed, or our hindrances, like seeing the hindrances clearly. And removing them from harm's way is just that. It's removing them from harm's way so we can actually explore a little bit more. And the inquiry underneath the rocks is the practice of insight, like investigation and energy and mindfulness. And so the finding of our precious jewels is regaining our wisdom and insight. It's regaining our that which is really, really valuable for us, our precious jewels. So I can see that I've been speaking for about 25 minutes now, I think. Now it's probably time to end this Dharma talk. I thank you for listening, and I hope maybe you've woken up. That'd be wonderful. Sometimes one way of waking up is by listening to Dhamma, by the way. we can wake up when we listen to Dharma. So thank you for listening, and may we all wake up to the reality of the way things are. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for that insightful, yes, I would say so insightful talk. I picked up many gems of my own that I've been noting down as you've been speaking. So thank you so much for that. I think we all had a wonderful time.
Yep.
Did you want to open up
Yeah,
now?
no, well, I wondered whether everyone would like a stretch. I mean, I think in
Oh, yes. Do you want to
yeah,
go?
everyone would like a, would you like to have a stretch, anybody, to move your body? That's what when I was inquiring about what you do usually do at the Metta Center, they said, you'd have meditation, then you'd give Dharma talk, and then we have a short stretch and maybe another meditation while you're stretching, and then we have
Sure,
some
let's do
Q&A.
that.
So I might invite you, everyone, if you feel comfortable, to move your body. So I don't know if you can see me from back there. I'll try to make it so you can see me. I'm just standing up now, and I invite you to just get into your body. And if you wanted to just raise your arms. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing with my arms. I'm just moving them up like this, moving them around like that. Okay. And just move your body up, move it around. Breathing in while you move up, breathing out while you move around. One more time. And we go the other direction now. Up. Breathing in on the upward movement and down with this movement. And again. One more time. And I'm going to invite you to just kind of, maybe this might be a bit hard to see. I'm going to invite you to imagine that you're holding a beach ball, and you move your hands around the beach ball, and then you spread them out like that. And you bring the top hand across, so it's like on the top of a beach ball now, and you move it around, and you spread it out the other way. And we bring it over again, moving it around, and moving it out. And moving your hands back behind, just giving a bit of a stretch like this. And then just wriggling a bit. And I invite you to be seated again. And if you're right-handed, I'm inviting you to put your right hand at the base, just below your belly button, the palm of your right hand. If you're left-handed, do the opposite. Left hand at the base, just underneath your belly. But I'm right-handed, so I'm putting one hand there, and the other hand, the palm of my hand is going over the crown of my head. And I invite you just to relax into that calming, I don't know how to describe it. Imagine that there's energy coming from the base of the hand at the base, up your spine, and into the crown, and going around and coming back down again. And it coordinates with the breathing. Just imagine that kind of an energy pulse going up and around and down and up and around and down. There's a flow between the hands. And move the right hand to your solar plexus. Solar plexus there. And let the connection re-establish and feel that energy flowing. And move your right hand to over your heart in the center, your emotional heart, your spiritual heart, that your heart center, not your physical heart, but the spiritual heart. And then bring your left hand so that it's over your right hand. And I invite you to go to that warm space in your spiritual heart, your heart center. That place that is filled with warm benevolence or compassion and or peace. And if you can't find such a place or such a feeling, know that it is there and nourish it with gentle attention. Nourish the experience of warm benevolence, loving kindness, and let it spread throughout your whole being, whole body. Relaxing it, calming it, soothing it, and connecting. And if you feel so inclined, let it spread from your heart beyond the bounds of your body-mind to touch the hearts of all of us here together. With thoughts such as, may we all be happy, peaceful and free. May it be so. Thank you, everyone. So I'm just going to open it up, or Simran's going to open it up for any questions or comments or uh, anything about the Dharma talk or the meditations, exercises, anything you'd like to make a comment about or discuss.
Yes, if you're online, you can raise your virtual hand if you wish to unmute and ask your question, or you can send it through in the chat. If you wish to send it anonymously, just send it to me. And then, of course, in person, you can just let me know. So thank you so much, Eddie, for being our first volunteer to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Hey, Eddie.
Hi, Malcolm. Thank you for your talk.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part of your talk that caught my attention about being negative, and it grows stronger and stronger every time, to the point that it became something automatic.
Yep.
And you mentioned a story about feeding the good wolf versus the bad wolf.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I'm about to ask you is that, how do we handle this situation when the negativity or the worry seems like autopilot or automatic?
Autopilot, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what are the strategies or steps that we can do at the beginning to counterpart this particular issue?
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. Yeah. Look, there's hundreds of ways actually. But eventually, but from a Buddhist perspective, the greatest tool is mindfulness. To actually be honest with yourself, and this is what happens with insight meditation and the practice of the four satipatthana, or the four foundations of mindfulness, is that we courageously turn towards that which is difficult. I I I didn't quite clearly explain that in the talk. Actually, maybe I'll record this right now. I didn't quite clearly explain it, that the way we can purify our mind is by attending to the wholesome and nourishing that. And with with mindfulness, what we do is, rather than denourish, where we denourish the unwholesome, but we attend directly to the issue. Like we turn our attention to the issue rather than putting our mind somewhere else. We're actually turning our attention to the issue, but it must be turned to the issue. It must go into the issue when we have some stability and strength of concentration. Otherwise, it'll just get overwhelmed. So, um, first of all, it's good to develop some concentration, and then it's useful to actually turn your attention to this experience with with compassion and kindness, and get to see it and get to know it. Get familiar with it, but not get caught up in it. And so usually what happens is we turn to something and then we sort of feed into it, and then we start believing all these negative thoughts about ourselves, like, oh, I'm a failure, I'm terrible, I'm no good, I'll never be any good at meditation. How can I possibly get enlightened? I'm such a dunce, or whatever it is that people say. But what we do is we recognize all those voices, all that negative commentary, and we just see it for what it is. We said it's just blah blah. It's just mental phenomena. It's just mental creation. You can usually just name it. There's a wonderful exercise with mindful self-compassion. There's hundreds of exercises in Buddhist practices, but there's a process that I called that is called mindful self-compassion. It's a development from Western psychology. It's about developing self-compassion, and it has a couple of processes: name, feel, soften, soothe, and allow. So, naming and feeling a difficult emotion, for example, is the mindfulness component of this. Softening around it, soothing it with compassion, and allowing it to be and go is the compassionate component of it. So the mindfulness component helps us see it. And when we can see it and we're clear about it, we just don't nourish it. We just don't feed into it. And we let it fall away. Because it does. It does. This is the power of mindfulness. Mindfulness has the power to let in the good, let go of the bad, and nourish the good, if that makes sense. Is that clear? Are you coming from Indonesia, Eddie, or?
Yeah, I'm from Indonesia actually.
Okay.
Oh, you've been here.
Salamat malam. Is that right? Is that right?
Yes, that's all right. Good evening.
Yeah.
Oh,
So how was that did that clarify it in any way?
yes, I got so many points from your explanation and very clear. So what about if your mindfulness is, at the moment is not in a good state? Like, somebody could be very sad at the moment, and you sit with that feeling, and it just feels like much easier if you just get away from it. Go to watch some movies, have a walk, or something like that. You just cannot sit with that because it's so tense. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it takes a bit of understanding to recognize that greed, ignorance, and hatred maintains negative patterns. And so when you talk about greed, ignorance, and hatred, they're the three root causes of suffering. You can break those root causes of suffering into all sorts of different ways of understanding, psychological ways of understanding what maintains issues. Like something that maintains anxiety, for example, is avoidance. And something that maintains depression, for example, is rumination. Rumination means going over and over and over and over these common, these thoughts that I'm a failure, I'm no good, I'm just so sad, it's horrible. And we tend to distract ourselves with in whatever way we can. And it's really, that boils down to avoidance. Mind you, at times we need that. Like there's a balance, there's a healthy avoidance sometimes, absolutely. But ultimately, it's about having the courage to turn towards it with with a clear mind and just name it, call it for what it is. I see you. I see you. You're you're just, it's just avoidance. I mean, you probably heard some things about Mara. The Buddha had meetings with Mara even after he was awakened. I think in that respect, he was having meetings with Mara to provide an example for how to deal with difficult things. And something the Buddha would say would be, I see you, Mara. You can't fool me. And it's like that. It's like if you can name it, it gives you, it gives you a spaciousness from it. Like just naming it. Oh, there it is. There's my old friend Worry. Hello, Worry. How you going today? But look, I'm too busy for you today. I've got other things to do. Thanks very much. I know you really want to come in and, sit down and take over my day, but I've got other things I need to do. So you just don't feed into it. There's hundreds of ways of working with this kind of approach. So, is that any clearer, Eddie?
Yes, Malcolm, thank you. I like that
Bubbles.
approach about naming it and recognizing it and try to befriend it, not to suppress it or try to get rid of it.
Absolutely. And, this name feels soft and soothe and allow. I mean, you can probably go onto my website and find that. But anyway, it's about if we're having a painful emotion, it's easy for us to feed into that painful emotion with thinking about it. But if we feel it in our bodies, the body doesn't proliferate. It doesn't really proliferate. When we think about it, it's subject to something called papancha in Pali, which is mental proliferation. It just goes on and on and on and creates a big story about it. And that makes us even more upset. But if we can feel it in our body, like the body is present, the body is here now. And it might be uncomfortable, but it's much easier to work with than a whole bunch of thinking patterns that we're completely entangled in. And we take these thinking patterns to be real, whereas in fact, they're just events, they're not necessarily direct readouts of reality. It's much better to log into or touch into our body's responses. Yeah.
Thank you, Malcolm. I will check
Okay.
your website later.
Oh yeah, well, I've got things on my website. I've got all sorts of things around, so there's courses. I got an online audio course on Insight Timer, but there's a whole range of things. I've got a book. I mean, the book will explain that a little bit easier. But I'm not trying to flog it on you, but I'm just saying it as an example. Yeah.
Thank you. I love reading.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Any other comments or questions that anybody has?
Person? Comments? No. Well, then I'll take the opportunity, Malcolm, to
Yeah.
ask a question. And I think more broadly for everyone, how in a time where often, especially beginners coming to meditation, who are more so guided in the serenity meditation to calm their minds at first, since
Mm.
that's the starting point often, they when thoughts arise, just come back to the breath, for example. How then does someone differentiate when something is just a thought ruminating that should be perhaps put away versus what is helpful when you are transitioning to insight, and the difference between just unhelpful thinking, whereas inquiry can be helpful? How could someone distinguish that?
Yeah, look, this going backwards and forwards between serenity, is really, it's kind of like uh it's good to get a grounding in mindfulness to begin with. And a grounding in mindfulness helps us enormously. And those two approaches they go together. Like you calm your mind a little bit, then you can inquire. When I went to Thailand into the forest traditions, the first thing they said to me, and this is before I could speak much of the language, um, for goodness sake, just calm and still your mind and then inquire. So they kind of go backwards and forwards. So it's useful to just in invite people to investigate. If there's something happening here, if there's something happening in their lives or in their mind that's kind of painful or difficult, it's useful to inquire. And in fact, you don't have to, I mean, some of the processes behind the old psychological approaches, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, was they didn't talk about, getting a clear mind first. They just talked about investigating it. Like they would take their thoughts, for example, to court and look at the rationale behind those thoughts, or seeing the distortion in those thoughts and letting them go, or having an alternative thinking pattern. So what we do is we generally teach mindfulness as well as being able to calm and center and soothe your mind. It's not like, and they're both um, they're both they work simultaneously, if that makes sense. So if I was suffering and I went to if a client who's suffering comes to me, I'll ask what's happening, and then I'll exercise some inquiry, and I say, well, when this happens, what happens then, and so on and so forth. And in that very process, they begin to get some understanding, and then I might invite them to, say, a little bit of a meditation practice, just so they can calm their mind. But it's a kind of mutual development. It's not just singular, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes it any clearer. I'm just thinking about the programs I've run. I've run a lot of programs with people with severe mental health issues, and basically we just taught them to develop uh, mindfulness to begin with, and gradually and slowly they developed a concentration as well. And they could see that it worked together.
Malcolm, certainly that does give some clarity. And I think it points to what you were mentioning to Eddie, especially when in those moments of mindfulness, if you inquire and find something perhaps unwholesome or difficult to deal with, if you are able to make friends with, for example, worry perhaps, then because you've got a calm and clear mind, you're not just rushing at it or, being averse towards it, but you can go through the right processes to, like you said, purify your mind in a more wholesome way. So I can certainly see how that ties in, and they work, and they are mutually supportive. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Malcolm, can you put your website on the chat, please, so we can have a look?
Sorry, what?
Can you put you have a website, you said, so can you put it on the
Yeah.
chat?
I can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Mal Huxter. Actually, on my website, you'll see that I offer days of meditation, online days of meditation. The next one's coming up on this Saturday, if anybody's interested. I'll be doing a longer version of the talk that I'll be giving next week on this one. This one, I usually, on these days of meditation, Mal Huxter. Oh, no, that's my email address. Sorry. malhuxter.com. Okay. malhuxter.com, basically. I could probably get it up and give you a direct link. If you want to give me a second.
Yes, and Malcolm, I noticed that you do have a list of upcoming events. Did you want me to share that with the Meta Center friends? We have
Sure.
that group, so if you, I'd be happy to share that after the session.
Great. Yeah, look, I've got a retreat coming up in about a month, actually. And I'll just do something here. I'll just paste this paste my website there. Yeah, that's probably better. That's a direct link to it. So yeah, I've got it's called, what is it called? Serenity Insight, Waking Up with Serenity, Insight, and a Boundless Heart. Basically, it's about, I'll be teaching the 16 steps of mindfulness of breathing in the first 6 days, and then I'll incline towards emptiness practices. And there's still spaces. It's a hybrid retreat, but I think the online spaces are all booked out. There's still spaces for in person. That's from the 29th of August till the 7th of September. And it's in Sydney, by the way. It's in a Carmelite monastery in Sydney. And the other one is a later one in Byron Bay. And that's not until December. But there's I've got a whole range of things if anybody wants to get onto stuff. But I don't want to bombard people with things. If you can come along next week, if you came along a Saturday, I would do a longer version of the talk I'm doing next week, and you'll get the big version. The talk next week, I want to talk about spiritual pleasure, and it's along the lines of serenity. So I want to talk about that next week and how we almost have there's ways of cultivating joy, happiness, peace, and equanimity where we can cultivate these qualities even in difficult circumstances. So anyway, that's what next week's talk is about. And that's what I'll be focusing on the day of meditation on the 2nd of August. And how many people? There's a couple of people that come to that day of meditation here online tonight anyway. So,
Sounds wonderful, Malcolm. And we do have a question in person, Eugene.
yep, great.
Yeah, thanks for the talk, Malcolm.
My pleasure.
I was just wondering, like what are some things that you would recommend for how we can be, more mindful and more ethical in day-to-day life?
Right. Well, traditionally, you can take the precepts. You can take a sort of vow to yourself that you are going to avoid as much as possible the intention of killing living beings, of taking that which doesn't belong to you, of being careful about your speech so you don't speak in a harmful and hurtful way. Be aware of not indulging in the senses in a way that's harmful to someone, like yourself or other. And usually it's about maintaining sexual conduct that's unharmful, not hurtful, and within social boundaries, so to speak, and also avoidance of intoxicants that cloud the mind. So that you can take a vow to do that, but the vow usually comes about from an understanding that when you do unwholesome actions, such as hurting and harmful actions, including taking intoxicants that cloud the mind, it's trouble for ourselves. It just makes our own mind unclear and unprofitable or unworkable. So, I mean, when I say taking the precepts, it's comes from one's own inner wisdom that we take the precepts, or we vow to ourselves that we're going to maintain wholesome behavior. We're not going to hurt anybody as best we can. And then that very vow or that very intention works in a prospective way, like it helps to protect us as we move through our day-to-day activities in a way where we can, when we get an opportunity, or one situation might arise where we might go against our vows or go against our intentions, and mindfulness locks in and says, hey, hold on a minute. You made that vow early in the morning, or you made that vow, a couple of days ago. Now's an opportunity to follow through with that decision. you might feel the impulse to say something horrible to someone or say something nasty, or based on anger, you want to hurt some person. And because you've made an intention previously, you'll have enough mindfulness to stop and do something different. And so a good way to practice mindfulness is just to remember to be here now, every now and then, whenever you have the opportunity to get into what you're doing. And there's something called, after retreats, I usually talk about having touchstones. Like every time you go to the toilet, for example, every time you press the flush button, just remember to be present for that. Every time you wash your hands, remember to be present for that experience. Every time you open a door. And, you can bring in more and more touchstones in your life so that you can just basically remember to be here now. This is the reality of life. This is where reality is in this moment, rather than being off somewhere else. So if you want to practice meditation, like formal meditation, then that enhances it even more. And with formal meditation, I see it as a moment to stop and be present and calm and settle, and then also inquire if my mind's calm enough. Actually, what I do, if I can manage to do 2 meditations a day, the evening meditation is usually about mostly serenity, where I just calm down. I let all the day go and I bring myself to a quiet spot. In the morning, when I'm doing a meditation, it's often about inquiry. And I'll also try to do one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. So I'm setting up a kind of good space for myself with other people, other beings. I mean, there's 101 different ways to kind of enhance and energize your practice. But it begins by here now. It begins by just being present to your body, to your feelings, to your mind, to experience here now. Asking yourself, what's happening now and how is it happening? Just remembering to be here rather than being lost in proliferative thinking processes and so on. I don't know if that's clear enough.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
It's 8:30.
Yes, indeed it is. Thank you for that. Malcolm, we do have one more question. Did you
Go for it. I don't mind. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, so Ellie's asked, may I please ask, what do you mean by inquiry? Aren't we supposed to be no mind?
Wow. Look, no mind is a Zen term, and I'm not sure what they mean. But what I mean by inquiry is it can be discursive insofar as you're thinking, you're having words through a thinking process. Or it can be non-discursive. Mostly it's non-discursive. It's discursive. It's kind of an interest in what's going on. The term no mind, I'm not sure what it means. I have practiced Zen, but I still don't know what no mind means. It could mean that even though there's many experiences, sorry, I'll say it another way. No mind could mean that everything is empty of thingness. It could mean that everything is empty of thingness. But there's a saying with Analia that Analia is a wonderfully wise scholar and meditation practitioner. He's a monastic. He says the void of emptiness is full to the brim of causes and conditions, meaning that emptiness here doesn't mean like a voidness. It means that experience is empty of thingness. And there's many different ways we can understand emptiness, but one way we can understand emptiness is that everything is interdependent. Everything is interdependent. So our experience tonight, we can have this thought that it's a solid experience, but it's in fact this changing process. It's a changing process of multiple streams of processes interacting. And so, yeah, streams of dependently arising processes interacting. I'll repeat um, that phrase or that sentence, who I got from someone called Lee Brassington, who's a meditation teacher. But because it explains the way things are, and it emphasizes that there's no thing in all this. There's no thing in me. Like I heard Joseph Goldstein once talked about how we define self usually with a noun, as a noun, but usually it's much better to talk about it as a verb. It's this changing process. So when you talk about no mind, well, the mind is a solid concept. When we say mind, it's like a solid concept about something, but there is actually no solidity there. There's no mind there. So that's what I think perhaps the Zen people talk about with no mind. And inquiry is one of the factors of awakening. It's something that leads to awakening. If we don't have any inquiry, we don't kind of get to know anything. It's this quality of uh, looking into something and seeing what's happening and how it's happening. Gives rise to wisdom.
Thank you, Malcolm. And we've got thanks from Eddie at Paces. Thank you, Malcolm. Very helpful talk. He says a great lesson. Thanks, Malcolm, Simon, and all. Ellie also, who asked the question, says thank you so much. And I would like to extend my thank you to you, Malcolm, for tonight's session, touching on the dynamics and mutually supporting aspects of serenity and insight. I must say that you've just mentioned three amazing teachers in Buddhism. And I was thinking to myself during the meditation how much it resonated, the guidance with the voice of Bhikkhu Analayo. And I thought, oh, Jesus, now I know that that is one of your influential teachers. So
Yeah.
thank you for connecting so many different aspects. You even touched on dependent arising, one of the most probably difficult but profound teachings of the Buddha. So perhaps it would be nice to see that in the fourth session.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I was contemplating about giving a talk on dependent arising, and but also I was thinking about whether I should do that or talk about the last tetrad of mindfulness of breathing. Hi, Sinsin. Nice to see you. I'll talk about the last tetrad of mindfulness of breathing, which is all about insight. So next week I'll focus on serenity again. Well, I haven't focused on serenity today, but I'll focus on serenity next week. The week after, I want to focus on insight insofar as talking about the eighth theta to awakening, which is called the conceit I am, talking about that, which is this self-conceiving process that we all get caught in unless we're awakened, fully awakened. And the last session, still not sure, but it'll probably be something like dependent arising, emptiness, and waking up, something like that.
Well, thank you, Malcolm. And I'm sure all those who've attended tonight are looking forward to the remaining three sessions. I mean, who doesn't want to come back next week for some spiritual pleasure? That sounds wonderful. Before you wrap up, I just wanted to share some of the MetaCenter events with our friends. So coming up on the 24th of August, there is a wisdom and empowerment session at Sydney Town Hall with teachers from various traditions, giving Dharma talks and a blessing ceremony. Regularly on Mondays, we at 7 p.m. at Bankstown Western Sydney Uni campus, we have our Mindful Mondays. On Tuesdays, we've got mindful yoga sessions. That one is in person only, also at Bankstown Western Sydney University. And you can join us again for the next 3 weeks on Wellness Wednesday for Malcolm sessions. And every week we have sessions here at Parramatta City Campus, Western Sydney University. Once a month, also on Sundays, we have workshops with Aya Karunika each month, which are family friendly at the Western Sydney University Parramatta South Campus. And a huge event coming between a series of events actually between the 8th and 15th of November for the Metta Center anniversary. More details to come, so please save the date. Thank you so much. And Malcolm, if there's any particular way that you would like to finish off the session, I invite you to do so.
Well, maybe I can do it in a very traditional way, a dedication of the merits. Merits are units of goodness. And when we dedicate the merits to other beings as well, it's like they multiply. So dedication of merits is a great thing. May the merits made by us now or at some other time be shared amongst all beings, infinite, immeasurable. By rejoicing in this cause, this gift of merits given by us, may beings all forever live a happy life, be freed from hate, and may they find the path secure, and their good wishes all succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm, and good night, everyone.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you,
Next
Malcolm.
time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Good night.
See you next week.